All right, welcome to Creator Hardware, where today we're going to talk about what it's been like to switch from Intel to AMD rendering videos. Creator Hardware is all about the hardware and software to make online content. If you like the video, make sure and subscribe, hit that bell notification, and if you don't mind, hit that like button. All right, so when I started editing videos for YouTube, I started with a Asus laptop with an i7 and a 1070 graphics card. Nothing fancy, it worked. I got to the point where I really needed to upgrade due to just the time it took that laptop to render videos. So I had NZXT build me a computer using their BLD service. Originally was a 7700K from Intel and a 2080 from EVGA, NVIDIA graphics card. Since then, I upgraded to a 9900K, but I wanted more cores, more threads. So I built this system. This is a AMD 3950X 16 core 32 thread editing beast. So we're going to talk about what it's like editing exclusively on AMD. Now the Intel system I use with 9900K is 2 generations old. They're an 11th gen. The AMD system is 1 generation old. There's now a 5950X that's available. I haven't been able to get a 5950X to upgrade to, so I'm sticking with what I got. But we're going to talk about what it's been like. Overclocking is something that Intel is famous for. It's stupid easy on Intel. When you look up 9900K overclocking, you've got 50, 60 video choices to tell you how to overclock. Overclocking, in case you don't know, is basically hot rodding your computer. It basically helps you do more, do it faster, all that kind of stuff. It's fun, but that's what the whole point of it is. Intel, when you overclock it, you get a lot of advantages in rendering and scrubbing, and it helps a lot with video editing. AMD, on the other side, is nowhere near as user-friendly for overclocking. Now, when I first built the system, I used Ryzen Master, which is a AMD program basically designed to overclock your CPU. Now, you've got a couple different choices. You've got manual overclock, you've got creator overclock, and you've got a precision boost overdrive, yada, yada, yada. I could never get it to run right on Ryzen Master in the manual overclock. I always wound up losing too much. You know, when I set all cores, it would crash, it would do weird stuff. The precision boost was probably the most stable, but I had temperature issues. The creator one didn't seem to do anything, but you know. Anyway, one of my biggest problems since I've built this system is idle temperatures. It would idle at 50 degrees Celsius. That's pretty hot for a CPU at idle. My Intel system idles at 30 C, right around. Obviously they'll vary a little bit, but that's what it was idling at. Now on renders, mid 70s, I've got more than enough cooling for, you know, full renders. It would never get even close to thermal limit. Thermal limits, you know, 95, 105 Celsius. Never got anywhere near there. Never had any problems with hitting high temperatures on renders, but idle was always hot. Researching it online found that that was a very common occurrence. Recently, Ryzen Master decided to crash on me. And that's not the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth time that's happened. I've reinstalled Ryzen Master that many times. Got to the point where it literally would not open. I would have to uninstall it, reinstall it, go back in, hit precision boost, and do it all over again. It would work for a while and then it wouldn't work again. And I got really irritated with it. It really started to bug me. The temperatures at idle were horrendous. It bothered me that the temperatures were that high at idle. I uninstalled Ryzen Master again, and I went into the BIOS of my Asus motherboard and did a full manual overclock. My manual overclock is simple. 4.3 gigahertz all cores. I dropped my voltage to 1.35 volts, and it's been rock stable ever since. I don't have, I've never had a lot of issues with crashes or anything like that with the system on Precision Boost. It was only manual overclock in Ryzen Master that I had problems. But since I've done the manual overclock, my temperatures are now, right now I am idling at 40°C, which, really good considering. It bounces between 42 and 48, but well below the 50+C it was idling at before. It's idling at, 40 something C because I've got Adobe Creative Cloud up and it's running. I've got a timeline up. So it's actually doing work while I'm sitting here talking to y'all. But it idles at, 40°C all the time now. If I just, don't have a bunch of stuff open and working, it idles at 40°C now at a 4.3 gigahertz overclock, which that's pretty much the limit of AMD CPUs on this generation. The newer generations have a higher clock speed, but this generation is kind of limited on that. I've got a 4.3 gigahertz overclock on all cores, and it's stable. But that's one of the things I have found with AMD. It is a little more tukey when it comes to just general use. My Intel system, rock solid. Never had an issue with it other than when I initially installed the 9900K and it wouldn't boot, which was a simple matter of a BIOS update. And that was more just my BIOS being out of date than anything else. That, I was upgrading a board that had a couple-year-old BIOS on it. Nothing unusual about that when you're upgrading. If I wanted to upgrade to a 5950X in this system, I would have to update the BIOS as well. It's an old enough board that it doesn't have the 5950 BIOS on it yet. And, well, I don't like the possibility of bricking my board, so I'm not going to update the BIOS unless I have to. My advice is, if you're not the kind of person that likes playing with computers and like figuring out that kind of quirkiness of AMD, I would highly recommend sticking with Intel. When it comes down to which system is better for you, it's without the overclocks, this system will, regardless of video rendering, handle it without issue. So will the Intel system. But if you're kind of the person that doesn't have that kind of experience in overclocking, you're never going to get the most out of a AMD system without playing with a lot of settings. You've got fabric clock, and you've got the F clock. The F clock is a huge thing with AMD because of the chiplet design. Intel doesn't have those issues. They've got other issues, but 14 nanometer plus, they're still on the same generation from 5 years ago. But Intel is an easier system to do a overclock on and just go, whereas AMD is a lot less user-friendly when it comes to that kind of stuff. They're getting better on the 5000 series, but they're still a very nuanced processor. If you want the most performance out of it, you're gonna have to spend some time with it, and you're gonna have to figure out what your CPU wants. Because even the guides online to overclock the 3950X didn't work with my system. If I put the voltages where they said to put them, it'd crash. So I literally had to go in and play with my voltages, my core speeds. I knew my CPU with the Precision Boost could run at 4.275. 4.3 was stretching it. When I went to that, I was like expecting to crash, and it didn't. I played with the voltage, got it as low as I could, but was still stable. It would still run R20. It would still run benchmarks without crashing. And I've edited with it since then, and it doesn't crash. Intel's definitely the more turn it on and work kind of person. AMD, because of the core count and some other factors, still is a great platform for content creation because of their cores and threads, and leaving Intel behind in the dust when it comes to that. But understand that if you want the most out of an AMD system, you're gonna have to put the work into try to figure out how to get the most out of it, because it is not one of those systems that is easy to overclock or easy to get the best performance out of it. It just is not. There's a lot of stuff you can tweak that will not go well, to put it bluntly. You know, you can tweak settings in BIOS and, well, it not want to run. AMD is great in the fact that they let you adjust so many things in the BIOS, but on the other side of it, they let you adjust a lot of things in BIOS that can not go well. So I'm definitely happy that I've gone AMD. Now I really want a 5950X to go in this system, but until I can get one, it ain't gonna happen. But I hope this video was helpful if you're trying to decide between Intel and AMD. Just an FYI, your motherboard has to support overclocking for either platform. You know, whatever Intel processor you get has to be a K-SKU. AMD, all of their processors allow overclocking. It's just whether or not the board lets you do it. Intel, you have to have a K-SKU to overclock. So make sure if you're looking to overclock, you get, on the Intel side, a K-SKU. AMD, doesn't matter. Every CPU is overclockable. Just make sure you get a board that supports that overclocking. For AMD, you need an X570. Intel, it depends on what platform you're using, but you need a Z board. So as always, hit record, hit upload. Thanks for watching. This is Creator Hardware.